quite a 9 days. Let me just tell you. And I'm going to go over it with you quickly here, and then we're going to get to your questions. So last Tuesday afternoon, Mary Pat, stand up, let everybody see you. Mary Pat and I left New Jersey and we flew to Miami to participate on Wednesday night in a little debate that you probably all watched. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Then we left there on Thursday, and we came up here to New Hampshire. And then we went to Merrimack, and we had a town hall meeting with a guy you all know, Governor Christie. And we had a great time together Thursday. And then on Friday, I got on an airplane, and I flew to Israel. And I spent the day, it's hard to get to Israel right now, if you might imagine, so I flew to Dubai in the UAE, and then flew from there to Tel Aviv, and spent the day, full 14-hour day, in Israel on Sunday. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Then I flew from Israel to Dallas, Texas, on Monday, and did an event in Dallas, Texas, a fundraising event on Monday night. Then on Tuesday, I flew from Dallas to Washington, D.C., and did 3 events in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I flew here to New Hampshire to do a couple of events this morning in Portsmouth, and then here to Hampton. Then tomorrow morning I'll do an event in Nashua. And then I actually get to go home for the first time since last Tuesday. So it has been a wild, wild 9 days. And guess what? They're giving me 2 whole days at home. And then Monday, I'm right back here in New Hampshire again. Because I don't want you people to do without me for too long. So we'll do Monday and Tuesday here in New Hampshire, and then we'll give you a break for Thanksgiving. We'll leave you alone, let you all enjoy your families for Thanksgiving. But I think it's important for you to know that, because this is what it's like if you're running for president the right way. Not just on TV commercials, not just in rooms with big donors, but that you're talking to people and listening to people who, if you're president, their lives you're going to affect. And that's the way to do it. That's the way I did it in New Jersey, running for governor, and I wouldn't do it any differently in running for president. I'm just going to say a few things about the trip to Israel, then I'm going to open it up to your questions. First off, I think anybody who's running for president should go. I give President Biden great credit for going early on after October 7th, and I think it's an important symbol to the people of Israel that America stands with them during this horrible, horrible time. And I kind of analogize it for those of you who, like me, are old enough to remember September 11th vividly. I analogize it to when Prime Minister Blair of Great Britain came over here for President Bush's speech after 9/11 to Congress. You might remember Prime Minister Blair sat up in the gallery right next to Mrs. Bush in a black suit and a black tie in mourning. Our greatest ally in the world, Great Britain, didn't just send a note or a video. Tony Blair got on a plane and he came here because he wanted the American people to know that Great Britain stood with the United States to do whatever we needed to do to retaliate against Al-Qaeda and the people who killed 3,000 of our citizens. I think when President Biden did what he did, that sent a similar symbol. And I'm running against him. I think he has no business being president, but he ain't always wrong. And we got to admit that when he does something right, and going to Israel was the right thing. So I went because I wanted to show solidarity with the Israeli people, but I also went because I wanted to hear directly from them and see for myself what happened. I know we all trust the media implicitly, and that everything we see, we believe, and everything they tell us, we believe. But every once in a while, it's a good idea, I think, to go over for yourself and see it. And our youngest son, Patrick, some of you met, we might be able to even get him up here at 23 years old to do a little campaigning as well. He's the guy in our family who's the quietest of the 4 children. He doesn't often say a lot to me about what I do. But I heard from Mary Pat that he was not thrilled about the idea of me going to Israel. And he was nervous. So as I was packing on Friday to go, he came upstairs into our bedroom and he said, "Can I say something to you?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "I really don't think this is a very good idea." And I said, "Well, Pat, I do." And he said, "Well, let me ask you, is it absolutely necessary for you to do this?" And I said, "I think it is." And he said, "Well, if you think it's necessary, go ahead." He goes, "But be careful over there, Dad, be careful." And we were. But it is a war zone, and you feel it from the minute you land. I landed in Tel Aviv at Ben Gurion Airport. It is empty, everybody. What used to be one of the busiest airports in the world is empty. There are more employees of El Al Airlines and security people than there are passengers walking through that airport. And as soon as I arrived at the airport, the Israeli Defense Forces put me in an armored vehicle. And I was in an armored vehicle for the rest of my time in Israel, and I went all over the country. I had Israeli Defense Force soldiers with me the entire time. And so you know from the beginning that you're in a place where anything can happen. Everybody has on their phones an app that signals when missiles are coming. And it warns you to get to the nearest bomb shelter, and it can tell from where you are with your phone. It directs you to where the nearest bomb shelter is. That's what the free and peaceful people of Israel are living under right now. So you feel that first. The first trip I took was to a kibbutz 600 yards from the Gaza border. And I went with the speaker of their Knesset. And when I walked around there, the speaker first showed me pictures of the kibbutz prior to October 7th. And it was a beautiful farming community of a few hundred people. Great little homes, stucco type homes with beautiful trees and flowers. What I arrived to was completely destroyed. The buildings, most of them were charred on the inside. They had been burned. Every 3 or 4 steps, you were kicking spent shell casings from semi-automatic weapons, still all over the ground, from the terrorist weapons. And I went in and out of different homes. All the homes are vacant now. No one lives there anymore, and most of the people who were living there are now dead. I went into one home of a 24-year-old couple who was just recently married. And it was a small little home. There was a living room area, a kitchen, and then a bedroom and a bathroom in the back, and then a bomb shelter. As I went in and walked in the front door, to the right was the couch, which was overturned on its side. The cushion's still there, completely stained with blood. And they explained to me it was the blood of the woman, the 24-year-old woman, who was lying on her couch reading a book when the terrorists came in, and they shot her dead right there on her couch. Her husband was in their bedroom getting dressed, and when he heard the shots, he came running out, and they shot him dead right in the doorway of their bedroom. And as I walked back there over the debris, the blood of his murder were still staining the wood floor in their bedroom. I looked around and I counted because it was so overwhelming. There were 140 bullet holes in the walls of that house to kill 2 people. I then saw, as I walked further in there, the charred remains of a house where they killed an entire family of 5 and then set them on fire collectively. And the charring inside their home was from the burning of their bodies. So when we talk about inhumanity and the inhumanity that was visited upon these people, it was extraordinary inhumanity. From there, I went to a military installation a little bit north of the kibbutz, and I saw 2 things there. One was the weapons they've seized from the terrorists that they captured and killed. And in case you were wondering whether or not all of the evil actors in the world are all in on this, you won't wonder about it anymore after I tell you what I saw. There were rocket launchers from Iran with the markings of the Iranian government on them. There were machine guns, AK-47s, from Russia. And there were rocket-propelled grenades from the government of North Korea. Russia, Iran, and North Korea, all supplying weapons for this attack to this terrorist group. And it's not speculation. It's not a conspiracy theory. I stood in front of it and saw it. And then they took me into a room and said, we'd like to show you a video. It's 43 minutes long, and it is raw footage from essentially 3 sources. The terrorists drove in mostly in trucks, little pickup trucks, Toyota. I don't know why they were mostly Toyota, but most of them were white Toyota pickup trucks. And they all had dash cams installed on them. So they were videoing everything they were doing and then uploading it immediately to the internet so people could see the killing they were engaged in. Body cams on the terrorists. They also had body cams on their armor that they wore. And then also the video that came from the cell phones of some of the victims. There's no narration. This is just the raw footage end to end to end. And the things I saw, I know that I'll never forget. I won't tell you all of them or even close to all of them because we'd be here and that's all we do all night. But I'll tell you 2. One, I saw a family. They had closed-circuit television in their house for security, both inside and outside their home. I saw the terrorists come in, and a mother and father were surrounding their 10-year-old and their 8-year-old, and they had all been shot dead. And they were still huddled together because they doused them with gasoline and burned them after they shot them, and the bodies had melded together. And to separate them, they had to cut and separate them apart. Second thing I'll tell you about is in another kibbutz, another father with closed-circuit television security. You first heard gunshots, and then you saw the father running out of the back door of his house with his 8-year-old son in one arm and his 6-year-old son in the other. And they ran to their bomb shelter in the backyard. And they got in, and he closed the door and locked it. 15 seconds later, you saw terrorists coming in, 2 of them in the backyard. They saw the bomb shelter. They went to it. They shot open the door. Door flew open, and then they threw a hand grenade in there. The next thing you saw was the father who jumped onto the hand grenade to save his children. He was killed. The 2 little boys come running out. The 8-year-old covered in his father's blood. The 6-year-old, one of the pieces of shrapnel from the hand grenade had taken his left eye out. And he kept crying, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. And his brother then took him by the arm to guide him to try to get back into the house to safety. And the 2 of them sat there at their kitchen table in their kitchen, covered in blood, rocking back and forth. The one child saying he can't see, and the other one saying to him, don't worry, we'll help you, but Daddy is dead. You know Daddy is dead. At that moment, the two terrorists came back in the kitchen. They looked at the children and then went in their refrigerator and took out 2 Cokes and drank Coke in front of these kids, as if they were guests invited for an afternoon picnic in their backyard. The last scene is the mother coming home. The mother had been out shopping. Imagine, she left them at home, her husband and her 2 sons. She came back, her husband was dead, her one son was blinded, and her other son had just experienced devastation that you and I know as parents, they will never forget. And she went sobbing and running out to the bomb shelter to try to retrieve the body of her husband. And the Israeli Defense Forces were there at that point and were holding her back because they didn't want her to see what the grenade had done to her husband. See, to me, it's not just the inhumanity, it's the joy that they showed in visiting that inhumanity. It tells you everything you need to know about Hamas. I don't need to know anything else now. You can't negotiate with these people. They don't want a negotiation. And as one of the terrorists said on a cell phone call that was intercepted by Israel, he called home to his parents and said, "Mom, your son just killed 10 Jews with his bare hands. Your son is a hero." And the mother and father cheered him on the other end of the phone. So if anybody wonders in this country whether the people of Israel have had horror visited upon them, and whether or not we need to stand up for their right to protect their country and to eliminate this threat from ever visiting them again, I don't think there's any doubt left in people's minds when you hear those stories about what needs to be done. And it's difficult. And I met with the president of Israel later, and he assured me that they're doing everything they can to avoid civilian casualties, but that Hamas requires their people to stay in areas that are going to be attacked, even when there's a notice of an attack, because they want their people to be killed so they can use it as a propaganda weapon against Israel. The Israelis, who have sent hundreds of thousands of leaflets into the Gaza Strip to tell people where they're going to attack so they can leave there, care more about the lives of the Palestinians in Gaza than Hamas does. And just yesterday, the Israelis performed an incursion into the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. And what did they find, everybody? Machine guns behind the MRI machine. Rocket-propelled grenades in the emergency room. They are doing exactly what Israel told us they were doing. They are using hospitals as headquarters for military operations, so that if Israel tries to take out the military operation, they're going to kill patients at the same time. These people need our support. They're our best ally in the Middle East. They're the only democracy in the Middle East. And these people want to wipe them out because they're Jewish. That's it. All I heard over and over again on that video from the Hamas commanders was, "Kill the Jews, kill the Jews." Now look, we heard this before 85 years ago. And many of us didn't believe it in this country. We didn't want to believe it, and we didn't. And to our horror, once we got into the war, we found out exactly what happened. And 6 million Jews later exterminated by Nazi Germany. We know what the truth was, and we said never again. Well, it's happening right now. And America has to stand up against this kind of evil, because believe me, they're not content with just killing the Jews in Israel. They want to come here and kill every Jew here in America and anywhere else in Europe or South America or any place else in the world. They will bring the terror to us. And so we need to make sure we support Israel to do what needs to be done here and send a clear message. And the last thing I saw before I left was I went to the hospital in Tel Aviv to visit some survivors who had been shot, and also to meet with the families of some of the kidnapped victims. And Mary Pat and I now carry around with us every day these medals, dog tags that were given to us by the families of the kidnapped victims. And all it says is, bring them home now. Met a father of a 19-year-old dual Israeli United States citizen who volunteered for the Israeli Defense Forces and was guarding the border in Gaza. He was ripped out of his tank. The last time he was heard from, his phone was geolocated inside Gaza. They haven't heard from him since October 7th. And then I met another woman who had the most horrific kidnapping story I heard. She dropped her 8-year-old son off at her mother-in-law and father-in-law's house to his grandparents to visit with grandma and grandpa. And then she went out to do some errands. In that kibbutz, they were invaded by Hamas, and the 76-year-old parents were kidnapped along with their 8-year-old grandson. Their cell phones were geolocated in Gaza, but they have not been heard from either. Imagine this woman, her son missing, and her mother-in-law and father-in-law missing at 76 years old. And she said to me, I don't know if they could survive the stress of all this. And I fear they're not alive. And if they're not alive, then who's caring for my son? So we have work to do there. And I went there because I want to make sure that everybody in the United States hears these things directly from someone who's seen them. Can't rely upon news reports for this. We can't rely upon stuff on the internet and conspiracy theories and people who have all kinds of points of view. I went over there with only one point of view. I wanted to know what happened. And I now know, and I'll never forget it. And if I'm president of the United States, I'll tell you this. This country will stand next to Israel, and we will help them do what they need to do to make their people and their country safe and secure again, because that's what they deserve as free people in a democracy in this world. And America stands up for those type of people. So, these are serious times, everybody. And we've been in these times before. And every time we've been in these serious times, we've been fortunate that we've had serious leaders who have helped to lead us to do what we need to do to be able to make our country bigger and stronger and richer and freer. Whether it's all the way back to the Revolution, when if you took a poll here in New Hampshire or in my colony of New Jersey, you know, independence would not have won. The people were not craving independence. They were scared of the British Army, and they should have been. But we had leaders like Washington and Adams and Jefferson and Hamilton and Franklin who said, no, the only way we're going to truly be free is to have our own country. And they asked for sacrifice and led us, and we wound up establishing almost 250 years ago now the greatest democracy the world's ever seen. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln could have walked away from the South and let them go. But instead he said, no, a house divided against itself can't stand. We're going to make the sacrifices we needed to make to keep this country a whole country. And he did that. And we came out of the Civil War a bigger and richer and stronger and freer country because we freed the slaves and wiped away that horrible chapter of this country's history because Lincoln led us there. And in 1941, Franklin Roosevelt could have walked away and say it's a European war and a Japanese war, and we don't have any business in it, but we didn't. And good thing we did. Because imagine what this world would be like being led by the Nazism of Adolf Hitler. And we made a huge sacrifice. 500,000 Americans were killed in that war. But we came out bigger, stronger, richer, freer, and one of only two superpowers in the world to be able to reorder the chaos that was left after World War II, because we had a leader who was willing to do the big things, not the small stuff. And finally, we had Ronald Reagan in 1981, who said, we're not going to live with the Soviet Union anymore. We're going to eliminate them. We're going to relegate them to the dustbin of history, he said. And everybody thought this is this crazy cowboy, failed actor from California who's got his hands on the nuclear button. He's going to cause war. You remember all those arguments about Ronald Reagan. And instead, in his 8 years as president, he led us to the greatest era of prosperity, peace, and success this country has seen. And by the way, he eliminated the Soviet Union in 10 years. In 1991, December 31st of 1991, the Soviet Union fell, and there was one superpower left in the world. America, again, after making those sacrifices, bigger, stronger, richer, freer. And so was the world. All of Eastern Europe freed. All of those people who were under Soviet domination having their own elections, having freedom for themselves for the first time in decades and decades because of what America did. And our lives were safer because we didn't have those communist regimes threatening us all over the world in a Cold War with nuclear weapons pointed at us. You know, now we're not the only superpower anymore. The president of the other superpower is in our country the last 2 days. China is now trying to challenge us for supremacy in the world. And it's not that America has to be number one because of our ego. We have to be number one in the world because who wants to live under Chinese communism, where they tell you how many children you can have, what job you can have, where you can live or not live, what you can read, what you can hear, what you can listen to. That's what the Chinese people live under every day, and that's what they want to bring to the rest of the world. And you've got people in this country now, in our own party, who are saying, oh, no, 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 we can't be bothered with this. America first is what they say. America first. Well, let me ask you a question. Who in this room is not for America first? Right? We're all for America. Is someone going to stand up and say, I'm for like Belgium first? Let's go France second, and America is a comfortable third. We all want America first. But America has never been first when it's America alone. They're advocating for America alone. Fill the moat, pull up the drawbridge, and just worry about our own problems. That's not the way great nations have been built, and it's not the way this great nation has operated. And sometimes it's hard. I had a woman ask me at a town hall meeting a few weeks ago, why do we have to do this? And I said, I could give you a lot of complicated answers, ma'am, but here's the simple one. It's the price we pay for being the richest and freest country the world has ever known. And if we want to continue to be the richest and freest country the world's ever known, then there's things we need to do. So I want you to understand what the trip to Israel leads me to reaffirm about me. If you elect me President of the United States, that's exactly the way I'll lead this country. In the tradition of our founders, in the tradition of Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan. I become president, I want to do things of consequence. I want to do the big things that makes this country great. And the reason I want to do them is because I know the people of this country are great enough to do them. We have never shrunk from any challenge. There's never been any innovation where we have been passed. There's never been any display of courage greater than the courage that's been shown by the American people of our 250 years. So we need to decide. Do we want leaders who are selfish, self-consumed, who lead us to be selfish and self-consumed and navel-gazing? Or do we want leaders who say, through our selflessness, we inspire each other and the rest of the world to be better? It's a clear choice. And when you listen to people on that stage, that debate stage, and the one who's not there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is time to end the TV tough guy era in Republican politics. You got Donald Trump up there talking about all the garbage he talks about, and all it is about himself. How everybody's picking on him. The poor billionaire from New York can't get a break, right? So poor guy. Now look, everybody gets picked on in politics, and he's been picked on unfairly sometimes too. But as Mary Pat has said to me any number of times, when I complain about politics, she says, no one put a gun to your head, buddy. You did this voluntarily. All right, so be a big boy, Donald. You got into this voluntarily, and sometimes it's rough, and sometimes it's not fair, but stop complaining about you when we have so many people in this country who need a leader who will put them first, and he never will. And then I listened to Ron DeSantis the other night talking about the southern border and saying he's going to shoot them stone cold dead when they come across the border. He's going to send the U.S. Army into Mexico. Now, look. Oh, and by the way, he repeated the great lie of the 2016 campaign, and now he owns it. He said he's going to build a wall along the entire border of Mexico, and Mexico's going to pay for it. I mean, how stupid do these people think we are? Now, we got fooled with that promise once, and now, by the way, Trump's telling all of us, well, I never had any legal mechanism to make the Mexicans pay. Well, there's a damn news flash. All of us were saying that 8 years ago on that stage. No, I'm the greatest businessman in the world. I'll be able to negotiate. The Mexicans will do what I tell them to do. The biggest load of crap. And now DeSantis actually stood on the stage Wednesday night and said the same thing. I turned to Nikki. I said, did he really just say that? She goes, yeah, he did. I'm like, it's unbelievable. Right? All this stuff is meant to make us angry and distracted from what the real job is. And what they hope is when you're angry and distracted, you'll vote for them. That's all it's about. It's about me first. I, on the other hand, is taking the position that I'm going to call the truth out for what it is. And I went to the Republican Party of Florida a week ago Saturday to give a speech, and some of you may have seen some of it on the news. I didn't even get a word out of my mouth, and they were booing me. Because I've had the temerity to criticize Donald Trump. And I'll say the same thing to you now before we take questions that I said to them that day and that I just said on Newsmax in the parking lot here in one of those vans they put you in to do TV to Eric Bolling on Newsmax. The truth is coming. And you can boo it all you want, but the truth is coming. The truth about him and what he did to this country and the crimes he committed and what it's costing us every day. The truth is coming. And I'll take as much booing as I need to take, because when they stop and they take a breath, that's what I say in response. The truth is coming. And the truth matters, everybody. The truth matters. And we better get back to that in this country. So there's a lot of hard truths we got to talk about tonight. So I'm going to stop talking, at least for a few minutes, while you get to ask me questions. You know the rules here. Ask whatever questions you want about any topic. You just raise your hand, I'll call on you. We have folks here with microphones. I can hear you, but you see those people back there with the cameras, they want to make sure they get your beautiful voice on it, because if we have one of those moments, that they like to put on TV, they want to make sure they hear your voice and not just mine. So I'm ready to take questions from anybody. Someone's got to start. Let's start with the gentleman right back there. He'll get you a microphone, and we'll be ready to go.
A pretty simple question. Age, how to check it. So we have a president who is lucid, and also that not only about age, but the mental competency. What's your stand on that?
Look, I'm not somebody who's for mental competency tests for elected officials for this reason. The test depends on who's giving it, right? And so every day, then we'd have the argument about that. How about we be the mental competency testers? Does anybody wonder whether Joe Biden's up to this anymore? I mean, look, I'm not trying to be mean. He's 80 years old. Everybody ages at different paces. I got a dad who's 90 years old. He's still driving. He's still shopping for himself. He's got a 74-year-old girlfriend. I mean, he's doing pretty good, right? I hope I age like him, right? But everybody ages differently. We see Joe Biden, and we've known Joe Biden in our national life for a long time. He's not the same guy anymore. When you fall asleep in the Oval Office in a meeting with the president of Israel while all the cameras are taking pictures, that's a problem. I don't need a competency test to prove that. That's not good, right? When you're shuffling along and you look like you don't know where you're going, that's not good. Now, I don't know whether that fits a competency test or not, but I will tell you what I do know. You need more than that to be president of the United States. This job is the hardest job in the world. It is relentless. Every hour of every day, you have to be ready. He's not ready. And by the way, neither is Trump. This guy, in the last couple weeks, can't remember who the hell he's running against. How many times has he said, when I beat Barack Obama? I'm like, no, you didn't beat Barack Obama. You beat Hillary Clinton. They look a lot different. He's out there talking about the fact that certain countries border other countries that don't. I mean, he's going to be 78 years old in June, and he's no more ready to go back in there than Biden is to stay there. So look, I think the ultimate judge of the competency of who's ready or not for the presidency is with us. We know. Let's just pay a little attention. Because what I worry about with competency tests, and I know Governor Haley talks about this, I just want to know who's performing the test. That's it. You know, you get somebody who's got an agenda performing that test, they might say someone's incompetent who isn't, or vice versa. I trust the American people to make that judgment. As long as we have the truth and people out there calling it out. I know it's not, politically correct in some parts of this country to say Joe Biden's just not up to it anymore, but he just isn't. Father Time comes for everyone. Father Time is undefeated. And we can't have someone 82 years old in the condition he appears to be in for another 4 years as president. And I fear what we'll really wind up with is Kamala Harris, who's plenty young enough, but got plenty of other problems on competency, in my view. So that's the way I'd approach it. I think it's fraught with some danger when you hand it over to professionals. I think you guys are the professionals. You'll judge it, and I think you'll judge it right. Okay, yes, sir. How about I give you mine?
Oh, thank you, Governor. Governor, first, thank you for your commitment to the First in the Nation primary. I'm a New Hampshire state representative, so I really appreciate your commitment to our process here. A few months ago, the Biden administration launched a lawsuit against Amazon through the FTC. And just this week, some of your opponents in this race have called for pretty stringent regulations on how Americans can use social media and technology. What's your view on the federal government's role in technology and big tech?
Look, what the hell are we suing Amazon for? Because they've made our lives so much easier? Because we can go on a computer now and order almost anything. In fact, unfortunately, from our Amazon bills, stuff that we don't even really need. I see these things come across, I'm like, and it's great, right? When you see them on your credit card, it just says Amazon and a certain amount of money. You have no idea what it was. Right? We got to be calling all around the country here to our 4 children to go, okay, who did the Amazon on September 14th for $38.25, right? Put aside that problem, it has made life significantly more convenient and accessible for lots of people. And so I don't know what they're suing them for. I mean, I know what they're suing them for, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And this is about the government trying to get in the middle of the private sector. Think about it. Jeff Bezos started this thing in his garage. in Seattle selling used books. And now he's what, the third richest man in the world? Look, pretty good. Now, if there are abuses that go on, then he should be called to task for those abuses. But not just because they're big. They got big, you know why? Because we made them big. Because we like what they're offering. And that's freedom of choice in this country. And you talk about social media. Look, Governor Haley, a few days ago said she wants everybody's name who's on social media. And she said it just that way. I want their names. Let me tell you, man, you want that kind of mommy state? Not me. Here's the thing. I want everybody to remember something. The Federalist Papers, which was the great argument over the Constitution between Madison and Hamilton predominantly. You know what those were? Anonymous. There were no names on the Federalist Papers. They were printed anonymously. Why? Because Hamilton and Madison all had their own political baggage, and they wanted the arguments to carry the day, not anybody's particular prejudice or bias towards them. We have a history in this country of anonymous public communication about issues both important and unimportant. You want the government to know that? So when she said it, I assume she meant it, because I've known Nikki for a long time, and I think she does say what she believes. But here's the problem with Nikki. She started to get some pushback. So then she said, no. What I meant was only to make it more civil online, because if you know that your pastor is going to be reading what you write, you'll be more civil. So everyone said, okay, now the government's going to decide what's civil speech and what's uncivil speech. So she got pushed back on that. So then she said, oh, no. The next day she came out and said, no, what I really meant was just to try to prevent the Russian and Chinese bots from doing these things. That's what I meant. I go, wait a second. What Russian and Chinese bot have a pastor? I don't know, one Russian or Chinese bot that actually has a pastor. Look, here's the problem at base with Nikki Haley. She says something, and if everyone isn't pleased with it, she changes it. If she gets a little bit of pushback and a little bit of resistance, she goes, oh, no. I didn't mean that because I don't want to offend you. Goodness, I don't want to offend you, because then you might not vote for me. And the single most important thing to happen here is for you to vote for me. So if I see something that offends you, I'll change it. Beware of the politician who looks you in the eye when you're asking a question and it's going, let's see, what does she want? She's wearing one of those red things. I mean, she's an ARP person, so I got to give an answer that she's going to really like on her issues. No. Be careful of that, everybody, because that's someone who wants power more than they want truth. And she wants to take away civil rights and free speech rights from the people of this country. Because what's the government going to do with that information then if you're being uncivil? Seems to me they're going to do something about it, right? It doesn't solve any problem if I know this guy's being uncivil on the internet, on social media, and then I don't do anything about it. Well, what the hell did I get his name for then? You know why they're getting your name. They're getting your name because then they won't come knock on your door. Say, it'd be nice if you were a little more civil. And you say to them, I think I am being civil. And they said, well, we're here from the government, and we don't think you are being civil. Right? And now we're censoring your speech, and we're editing your speech. It is wrong. And it gives you a window. Every once in a while, some politicians in this business make a huge mistake. They say what they really think. And it gives you a window into who they really are. I could still hear her saying it. I want every person's name who's on social media. My response to be, and this is kind of a Jersey response, so get ready. I would be like, who the hell are you? You want my name. I want to be 6'5" and play for the Celtics. It ain't ever happening. Nor should we give our names to the government if we want to say things in public. Hamilton and Madison didn't do it, worked out okay for them, and it should work out okay for us too. So I disagree with it. And what bothers me even more than the position is the fact that as soon as you get a little push, then all of a sudden you back off. And believe me, what if I'd done that a week ago Saturday in Florida when I got up there and they're booing me and I get up and say, well, oh, no. You misunderstand. I love Donald Trump. I think he'd be a great president. Don't we all agree? And they cheer and I go, thank you very much. And I walk off the stage. That's the same thing. When I stood up there, I took it. And I took it because it's what I believe in my heart. And I want to know what she believes in hers. So I'm not exactly sure. Yes, sir. Green hoodie.
All right, so this question's way off base from what most people would ask, but I feel it's personal for a lot of people, and that is the government's been promising for years about these bad actors calling into our grandparents, our family members, and stealing money. They're overseas, they're in India, they're in Pakistan, they're in Ghana, right? My grandparents lost $2,000 from one of these people, right?
Yep.
If someone was coming to my door every day knocking, trying to steal stuff from me, I call the cops and they come and they take care of this person. But for some reason, no one has an answer for this. No one is protecting these people.
I got an answer for you.
I'd like to
It's
hear
going to be
it.
your night. I probably did, when I was U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, I probably did, I want to say between 150 and 200 of those cases. It can be done. It's got to be done by federal law enforcement because we're the only ones with the reach to go overseas and do the other things of where these folks are. But I did these cases. You can do them. Federal law enforcement has to be told it's a priority. Now, I will say this. President Bush's administration, Bush 43, made it a priority for us. He said back in the early 2000s, tired of this fraud against innocent, mostly elderly folks, and he made it one of his law enforcement priorities for his U.S. attorneys, and I was one of them, to go out and get these folks, and gave us resources to go and do it, both at the FBI and at the U.S. attorney's offices. So we did between 150 and 200 of those cases. It can be done. You need the president and the attorney general to make it a priority because it has to be done by the feds. It's very hard for local law enforcement to do it. They don't have the technology most of the time to do it. Some of the big city, like Boston, New York, L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, the real huge police forces have some of the ability to do it, but they're still not great at it typically, and the feds are much better at it. So it can be done, but you got to make it a priority. And it was a priority during those years for President Bush. It fell off when Obama came in, and it hasn't really come back as far as I could tell. And so to me, this is, and it's not that hard given the technology we have now. Some of the folks can, and most of the folks either use telephone to do this, or they use internet and email. I have this amount of money for you. Send me your bank account number, right? It's usually like some Ethiopian, right? We've all gotten these emails. I'm so-and-so from Ethiopia. I've come into this money. I just need ways to distribute it. And look, some people who are either older and not able to process all that in a sophisticated way, or some people who are desperate and need help and have financial problems, latch onto it. So the thing that local folks could do is to educate folks better about this problem, which I don't think they do well enough. And what the feds would do if I'm president is say, look, it's not that hard and it doesn't take that many resources away from other things, but it can have a huge impact on the lives of the people who are being victimized. That to me is a grand slam in law enforcement. This much resource for this much impact. And so we did it when I was U.S. Attorney, and I ran the 5th largest office in the country for 7 years. We were able to do it, and a lot of my colleagues did it, and we could do it again. And I think it's a simple priority to set as president. Tell your attorney general, hey, tell the folks to get on this. And believe me, when I used to get like a phone call from Attorney General Ashcroft, it'd say, I spoke to the president, he wants you guys working on this. It was clear to me it was not optional, right? You're an appointee of the president, and he's asking you to do something. You do it, and we did it. So don't be despondent about it. It can be done, and if I'm president, it will be done because I've done it, And I'm the only person on stage, by the way, who's ever done any of this stuff. I've done it. I know how to do it. And that conversation between me and whoever my attorney general is will be really short. Just look at him and say, get this done. I did it. You know you can do it. Just go do it for me. Because every one of those folks that we can prevent from being victimized, it enhances their lives and takes away stress from them that they otherwise would have. And by the way, a few friends of my dad's have gone through this, and they're ashamed to even tell anybody because they know they've been taken. And so that's one of the other problems with it. People have to report this stuff too, because then they get ashamed and embarrassed because they feel like, oh, I was stupid and I got taken. These are pretty sophisticated characters. So it's not about being smart or stupid. It's about being informed about what to look out for and then to go after those folks to try to minimize the amount that it's done. So it's the first time I've gotten that question, but it's a good one. So not out of the realm. Let's go here.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, yesterday on television, I think it was, the president was in California, and he met with, I can't pronounce his name. Xi, thank you, sir. And they reached a thing about fentanyl, and the president said he was going to, this will curb fentanyl coming into our country. I lost a son to this. I want to know what curb means. I want to know what, stop it.
I want to know what curb means too. And what I said on TV today when I was asked about it was, I don't trust the Chinese. I'll follow the Reagan plan, trust but verify. So I'm glad that they're talking about it because they haven't been talking about it for years. And it's ramped up over the years of the Biden administration and the tail end of the Trump administration to an even greater amount of, and so that everybody, I know in New Hampshire, this is one of the biggest problems. So I think most of you know, but real briefly, China sends the precursor chemicals to Mexico, to the drug cartels, who then manufacture the fentanyl and traffic it into our country. But Mexico couldn't do it without the help of the Chinese. And this is an act of war by China. They know that those chemicals are being used to kill Americans. And that last year, we lost 110,000 Americans to an overdose. It is now the single biggest cause of death in 18 to 34-year-old men in this country. And it's outrageous. And you see what's happening here in New Hampshire. It's one of the worst states in the country for this problem. And so, look, I think the way I would go about this is to use the law enforcement resources we have to go after it at the source in China and in Mexico at ports of entry. And we have the right to go and do those things. And we need to have demand of Mexico joint law enforcement activities to try to get it there. I can't count on China not doing it because there's people who are going to make money off of it from China. And even if China has all the purest intentions, which I doubt, but even if they did, there's still some that would get through, even if they're making their best efforts. So we have to do all of it. We have to make agreements with them that we hold them to. We have to do joint law enforcement with the Mexico government to say, when it's coming, stuff's coming into your port, we want to be there to help interdict it. And then third, we need to provide more treatment in this country for people who get addicted. Now, some of these overdoses happen first time. And something's laced with fentanyl that the person didn't know it or didn't understand what they were taking, and they die the first time they take it. That's why making less and less of it come into the country is so important. But also, we have to understand that because of the demand for drugs in this country, there's going to be some that are going to get in because people have an ability to make money off of it. And that's why we have to provide more treatment in the country, and we have to treat it as a disease because that's what it is. You know, people try to make this a moral failing. It's not, everybody. It's a disease. Because you look at all the other things that we treat as disease: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, the three biggest killers in this country of folks as they get to middle age. Well, we all know this. Human behavior contributes to that too. Choices that we make often contribute to that. And yet we don't go to those people and say, well, you're having a heart attack, you're having a diabetic stroke, you're dying of cancer. Well, you deserve it because you ate this or smoked that or did whatever, right? Everybody in this room, if I asked you, and I will ask you, I won't propose to ask you, I'll ask you. Who in this room has never made a choice in your life that you wish you could take back? All right. My record remains undefeated. I've never been in a room where anyone raised their hand in response to that question. Guess what? We're just lucky that that choice wasn't to try a drug. Because if it was, we don't know what effect it would have on us. We don't know whether we would die immediately the first time we took it. We don't know whether we'd become addicted if we took it. People make bad choices at times. All of us do. But when addiction occurs from it, we need to be understanding as a country, in my opinion, and treat those people. And there are ways now that we can treat folks. There's medication we can give folks to help get them off opioids. There is talk therapy and group therapy that helps people in combination with medication and sometimes without it. But we don't have enough of that available in this country. And secondly, we have a stigma attached to it. I use this story all the time to try to explain it. My mother was an addict. Her addiction was nicotine. She started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948. When no one told you smoking was bad for you. In fact, back then, they told you it was good for you. It would make you energetic. It made you look cool, right? All this stuff. That's when my mom at 16 started to smoke, and she got addicted. And I watched her for my whole life try to kick it. Can't tell you how many times she tried to quit smoking. Gum, patches, hypnosis, all these things. For her, it just never worked. So after 55 years of smoking at 71 years old, she was diagnosed with lung cancer that had spread over her entire body. Now, when that happened, we didn't hesitate to tell anybody what was wrong with her. We weren't ashamed of it. And no one came back to us and said, well, Chris, I mean, she's been smoking since 1964 when the warnings went on the cigarette packs. She knew they could cause lung cancer, and so she's getting what she deserves. No, people were compassionate. They said, look, here's a doctor. Here's a treatment that helps someone else. Or we'll pray for her, or we'll go and visit her and comfort her. Let me ask you this. If my mother's addiction was heroin rather than nicotine, would I have told anybody? Would I have reached out for help? Because in our heads in this country, that's a moral failing. Somehow I was a bad son who couldn't help get her off it, or my dad was a bad husband, or she was a bad person. It was no more true of her for smoking than it is of somebody who gets themselves involved in opioids. And so, yes, we need to have joint law enforcement activities that interdict it. We have to make agreements with the Chinese that we enforce and have penalties behind as well. And even after we do all that, there's going to be some that gets in. And so for when it comes in, we need to treat people who have fallen to addiction, and we need to open our hearts and be compassionate about it. The fact is, those folks are suffering. And any of you who have had a friend or a relative who has had this addiction, you know how much suffering it causes them and how much suffering it causes the loved ones around them. And I had a good friend who I went to law school with. He was an incredibly successful lawyer, great-looking guy, married to a beautiful woman who was a doctor, 3 beautiful girls, successful in every way that you would judge success in this country. And he was a runner. Went out running one day, wasn't paying attention, stepped in a hole, wrenched his back. He was a trial lawyer. He was in the middle of a trial, and he couldn't afford to, get laid up. So he went to the doctor and said, I need to do something for the pain. And the doctor gave him Percocet, and he got hooked. And that led us on a 10-year odyssey where he went in and out of treatment, in and out of touch with us. He lost his license to practice law. He lost his driver's license. His wife finally kicked him out of the house. He lost touch with his daughters. He spent through his retirement funds. And at the end of it, my friend at 52 years old was found dead in a motel room with an empty bottle of Percocet and an empty quart of vodka. You know, we're not just talking about people who are moral failures. We're talking about people who we would judge as successes in every way we judge success in this country. But they fall victim to a disease that they can't combat on their own. The death that you suffered is repeated, unfortunately, every day in this country. Dozens and dozens and dozens of times every day. And the hole that that puts in the heart of a mother or a father and a sister and a brother, their friends, their colleagues, we need to get real about this. And we need to start fixing this problem by not judging these people, but by encouraging them to ask for help. Telling them that we're not going to judge them for it. Come and help so that we can help you save your life. And we won't save every life, but every life we save is going to be important to that family. And I don't want anybody to ever forget this. We have all this argument right now about abortion. My party is pro-life. Well, we better be pro-life for the whole life, not just for the 9 months in the womb. And when that life that we protected in the womb falls victim to drug abuse and is a 16-year-old girl laying on the floor of the county lockup, addicted to heroin, that life is a precious gift from God too. In the condition we find it, it's a precious gift from God. Every life is a gift. No matter how flawed or failed it becomes at a moment because of a disease, we need to help lift it up. And I think we need a president who talks that way. Because if we have a president who talks that way, it gives permission to people to talk about it. And I just give you one example. Remember, for women, breast cancer was an issue that was never discussed publicly. Until Betty Ford had breast cancer, and she went on TV and she talked about it. And what she gave was permission to every woman in the country who was suffering from it to talk about it too. And to ask about how to diagnose it, how to self-exam, all the rest of those things. Betty Ford did a wonderful service to this country by doing that. That's the unique opportunity you get as President of the United States and First Lady of the United States, is to have that. You have to use it, and use it for good to try to change something. So I can't tell you that I understand what you feel. But you know what? What I can tell you is that having lost a dear friend myself, I get a little closer to it. I'm not, as a father, where you are, but I'm closer to it. And we need to talk about it, and we need a president who cares enough to know that we can help treat these folks and we can help fix this problem and make the country a better place and spare some of that heartache that you feel and that lots of other people have felt in this country. So that's what I would do, combined with all the other stuff. But with the Chinese, trust but verify, baby. Count it twice with them. And thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Chris. I'm an independent, have been an independent for years, so I like to hear both sides of the story.
Yep.
So I go to lunch with a couple of friends, and I told them I wanted to come and see you. And they said, oh, don't bother. And I said, why? Well, before I want to say why, I want to tell you that you came on my radar because you were talking against that narcissistic buffoon who I never want to see in the White House again. He's an embarrassment to all of us. And he's stupid. I will never forget. So we're going through COVID, right? And he gives all these, whatever they call them, press conferences about what he's doing about it. And his minions go up and they talk, and I forget her name. What was her name, the doctor?
Yes.
What was it?
We sat with her. Dr. Birx.
Yes.
Deborah Birx.
So she gets up and she talks about how they're working on the vaccines and everything, and then he gets up and he says something about if only we could inject ourselves with some chlorine or something,
Yeah, bleach,
or Lysol. Oh my God! If you had any doubt before then, please. So that did it for me, for him, as if I wasn't already gone. But anyway, I told these two friends I was going to come out and listen to you, and they said, oh, don't bother. And I said, why? He said, don't you remember that whole thing about Bridgegate?
Okay.
And I said, no, and they reminded me about that. So I want you to have the opportunity to tell us your side.
Sure. Look, this is now 10 years ago, okay? 2013. I had one person from my staff and two people who worked at an agency that ran the bridges with New York, who apparently decided for some reason that they wanted to realign the lanes at the George Washington Bridge and take a couple of lanes away from the town of Fort Lee and give those lanes to I-95. Now, when they did it, I didn't know anything about it, as you might imagine the governor wouldn't know. And they later said that they did it as a punishment to the mayor of Fort Lee because he didn't endorse me for re-election. Now, let me just say this. At that point, I was 30 points ahead. So I wasn't really concerned about winning or losing. I knew I was going to win. These people did something really stupid. I'm not even still sure that was really what motivated them, but they did it. When I found out they did it, I fired them. There were 3 different investigations. One by the state attorney general's office, one by the United States attorney in New Jersey, and one by the Democratic state legislature. And let me tell you what all 3 of them agreed on. I knew nothing and had nothing to do with it. And that when I found out about it, I took the action to fire the people. Ultimately, Barack Obama's U.S. attorney decided to prosecute those people. At the time, I thought it was wrong. I didn't think they had committed any crime, but they had been stupid. Well, for being stupid, you get fired. But if we sent everybody to jail in this country who was stupid, we'd have to be building a lot more jails. This case was prosecuted. They were convicted. It went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court voted 9-0 that there were no crimes. 9-0. Clarence Thomas and Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed. That's got to be pretty bad prosecutorial misconduct to get Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Clarence Thomas on the same case. But look, those are the facts. But I'm accountable. It happened on my watch. I didn't know about it. I didn't authorize it. If I'd known about it, I would have stopped it. But it happened on my watch. I have 60,000 people working for me. I used to say all the time, my town hall meetings in New Jersey, they asked me, what's the scariest part of being governor? I said, the fact that 60,000 people have letterhead with my name on it, and I don't know what they're doing with it all the time. But I never shied away from accountability for it. In the end, I get credit for a lot of things as governor I don't deserve credit for. And the other side of that coin is sometimes you get blamed for things you don't deserve to get blamed for. But I never walked away from saying it's ultimately, I have to be accountable for it. So it's a sad part of my 8 years as governor. It's probably the only part of my 8 years as governor that I have any regret about. But I think what it taught me was that you have to be incredibly careful about every person you hire. That personnel is policy. I believe I'm better for it, but let me just say, I believe I'm better for it. I could have done without it. All right? I could have done without it. But I think in the end, and you know, it was one of the toughest parts of our public life that we've gone through together. And I'll just give you, like, I just been reelected with 61% of the vote in a blue state. And so you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And then this thing happens within, well, it happened in between my election and my inauguration. Okay, so right in that period. And I remember the 2 days afterwards, after the news came out, 3 days after, Mary Pat and I went to a basketball game for our youngest daughter, Bridget. Now, when you're governor and you go, our daughter at that time was 11 years old. When you go to like an 11-year-old basketball game, everybody notices you, right? You're the governor. You walk in with the state police. You're trying to be somewhat discreet, but it never works, right? It was different then. I was used to everybody looking at me. But now everybody was looking at you and saying, what did you do? What did you do? And I think that was an enormous lesson too. Like, I knew I didn't do anything, but I knew I had to wait to prove it. And it teaches you that you never ever want to be in that position again, because I felt shamed. Even though I hadn't personally done anything wrong, some people in my name had. And a lot of people who had voted for me were looking at me saying, what did you do? So I think it's an important lesson as a public official too. Like I said, I would have taken a pass on it, all things considered. But given that it did happen, I learned a lot from it. And I think it's made me better and more mature, and also better able to deal with challenge, because that was challenging. I'll end it with one story about it. On the night that the news broke, we didn't live in the governor's mansion because it was an hour and a half from our regular home, and our kids were all in school. They were all school age, so we wanted to keep them in their schools. Our oldest son at that point, by the time this event happened, was a freshman at Princeton. And so I was all day in the governor's mansion. I came back up finally at around midnight to the house, and, you know, we had state police all around the house all the time because that's where we lived for security. But I knew all the time, like, how many cars there were. So when I pulled up the driveway, there was an extra car there. I'm like, oh gosh, do I need extra protection now because of this, you know? And I walked in, but it wasn't extra protection. They had brought my son, our oldest son, up from Princeton. So I walked in, it was after midnight, and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I wanted to see how you're doing. And I said, I'm fine. You know, I put dad mode on immediately, right? I was like, I'm fine. Don't you worry about it. You go back to school, do what you need to do. I'm fine. And he said, one other thing. And I said, sure. He goes, did you do it? And I'll tell you, I get emotional about it now. That my own son had to look at me and ask. And I said, no, I didn't do it. And he gave me a hug and he said, okay, I can go back to school now. I just needed to hear it right from you. And what it taught me was that everybody needed to hear it from me. If my own son needed to hear it, then I needed to go out there. And I went out the next day and did a 1 hour and 50-minute press conference on national television for an hour and 50 minutes till every question was answered. And I learned it because my own son needed to hear it from me. And so I learned a lot from that. And I learned that being transparent with people and being completely open, while sometimes uncomfortable, is the best way to gain people's trust and keep it. So I hate that question, I have to tell you, because it gets me right here again, but I'm glad you asked it. Because for those women that you were sitting with, oh, were they men? Okay. So for those men, now you can go back and tell them that you heard it. And tell them that if they don't buy it, come here to my next one. Don't avoid it. Don't not bother going. Come and ask, and I'll give them the answer, and then go look it up, and everything that I said, they'll be able to verify was true. So thanks for asking. You got it.
Governor, I have a very broad question for you. You've been here in New Hampshire a number of times. What in New Hampshire have you learned from us in New Hampshire that you would want to take to the White House with regard to what are the, and I want to put you on the spot, what one major issue that you've learned here by meeting the people here in New Hampshire that you would take to the White House?
I don't think it's a lesson I learned here, but it has been emphasized to me more how important it is to people in here, how worried people are about it. And it's my friends here on Social Security, that people are tired of being lied to about Social Security, and they're tired of being sung a happy song about it, and don't worry, we'll fix it, but we're not going to cause anybody any pain or any discomfort. Folks who are on Social Security want answers, and they know that we're 10 years away from it being insolvent, and that'll lead to an automatic 24% cut in benefits for everybody who's on it. And so I knew about the issue beforehand. I had opinions about it beforehand. But folks in the red fleeces show up at every one of my town hall meetings. And they're wearing their AARP buttons. And even if they don't ask a question, they're talking to me by their presence. And so what it's encouraged me to do is just to be completely transparent about what I think. And you may have heard it on the debate Wednesday night. We talked about it. And there's a real difference of opinion on the stage about it. Tim Scott and Vivek and Ron DeSantis said, no problem, we'll grow our way out of it. We'll grow our way out of it. No one's going to have to make any sacrifices at all. And Nikki and I said, no, that's not true, and we're going to have to do some things about it. And what I've said before is that we have to raise the retirement age, not for people in their 50s or 60s, but for people in their 30s and 40s. And I use that son of mine as an example. He's 30 years old now. And if I raise the retirement age a few years as president for him, and he's got 40 years to adjust, and he doesn't, we got bigger problems with him than Social Security. But adding some ages onto retirement, we need to do for two reasons. One, because it makes fiscal sense. And two, because it makes sense because we're living longer. Remember when Social Security was created, the retirement age, most people didn't live to the retirement age. It was a great gig. I give FDR credit. You know, he said, okay, I'm going to take all your money, and then many of you won't live to ever collect anything. What's evolved over time, thankfully, is that we're all living longer. Medical science has allowed us to all not only live longer, but live better lives longer, which means we're more active, we have more needs, and that Social Security income is even more important to people than it was before. So we got to raise retirement age, and I said this at debate the other night. You know, Warren Buffett's always giving me a hard time about one thing or another. So I looked into the camera and I said, you know, Warren, I don't know if you're collecting Social Security or not, but if you are, you should be ashamed of yourself. We need to start doing some means testing on Social Security. For people in this country who have done extraordinarily well, I compliment them. And I think that's great. But do you really have to make the argument, well, I paid in, so I need to get my money out? Well, if you've got millions and millions and millions of dollars that you've saved, how about you live off that? And if you ever get to a point where you blow through all your money, come see us. But until that time, this is a social safety net program. Excuse me, that's the way it was designed. So that no one, after the crash, when everybody lost their retirement savings, people were dying in poverty when they grew older. This was meant to prevent that. Like I've said many times, there's lots of programs we pay for that we don't benefit from. My family, fortunately for me and Mary Pat, we've never been on food stamps, but we pay for food stamps in our taxes every year. And you know what? I'm happy to. Because I don't want anybody in this country to go to bed hungry if we can avoid it. And I'm happy to pay for that. The same way I'd be happy to pay into a retirement system that helped people who were in need and were able to pay for a roof over their head, heat and cool their homes, put food on the table. We've been incredibly successful in this country. And so we need to do those two things. And that is something I knew before, but it has become clear to me as that date of insolvency comes closer. People are really acutely concerned about it. They should be. And they want some answers from the people who want to be leaders. And the three other people I mentioned on the stage, Tim's gone now, so only two of them left. That's not an answer. And Biden, the same way. He gave his State of the Union speech last year, and he said, can we all promise that we won't touch Social Security? And both sides got up and cheered. And I turned to Mary Pat and I said, a room full of liars and hypocrites. They know they're going to have to do something. All they want is just not to have to get tagged with it so they can keep their title. I got plenty of titles. And if I never get another one, I've been governor, I've been U.S. attorney, I've been father, husband, brother, son. I have enough titles to last me the rest of my life. If you want to take one of these jobs, you better do stuff of consequence. And that's the biggest thing that's been reinforced with me and heightened with me in this campaign is the concern that regular folks have about whether their Social Security is going to be there for them and be there in full. And it's the responsibility of the next president of the United States, who may have 8 years. So there'll only be 2 years left if you're at the end and you do nothing. And then it'll be a full-blown crisis. The next president has to fix this problem. And if I'm president, I will. Yes. All right. She's going to come and give you a mic.
My name is Tara, and I'm a fellow New Jerseyan, born and raised. My entire family's from New Jersey. And being from New Jersey, I'm familiar with your reputation and some of the controversy. And I do have a question. It's going to sound argumentative, but I really don't intend it that way at all.
You're from New Jersey.
I know, and I
By
understand.
nature, we sound argumentative, so it's okay.
Yeah, I already gave that background, so it's probably everything I say is going to be
Have at it.
underscored by that. But my entire family is still in New Jersey. My sister, my father, my mother. I can even feel my New Jersey accent coming back as I talk about that. And my sister and her husband in particular have some really strong opinions. And I told him, I said, I'm going to come down tonight and I'm going to see Christie. It's going to be great. And they were not feeling the same way. And I said, I'll tell you what, do you have a question? I will personally raise my hand and ask him that question so that maybe you can get some clarity and perhaps change your
Let's
opinion.
give it a whirl. What do you got?
Okay, this is the question. Drum roll, right? Okay. I'm going to scroll through all of his comments here.
Yeah, skip those, okay?
I know. He said, would you keep COLA for Social Security even though you would not keep it for New Jersey state workers? And I have to add that my brother-in-law is a retired state trooper,
Yeah.
homicide detective.
Okay. Well, let me say this. So now I got to give you the New Jersey background. I apologize. But we did pension and benefit reform because our pension system was $150 billion in debt when I became governor. $150 billion. And one of the things that was part of the pension system was that pensioners got cost of living adjustments every year after they retired based upon whatever the inflation rate is. It was a mixed rate in New Jersey, which made it even higher than just pure inflation. But it was a cost of living adjustment. They never collected money to pay for this, right? So when they figured out what should the employee contribution be for your pension, they never included the COLA. Well, you know, if you don't include it, it's going to wind up just being more debt. And so one of the things that we did when we passed pension and benefit reform when I was governor, which closed 120 of the $150 billion debt, was to eliminate the COLA. And what I said to everybody at the time was, if you want to pay more going forward for your COLA, then you can. But if you don't, I can't ask the taxpayers today to pay for that. Because let's say, you probably, maybe you know, how old was he when he retired?
The earliest age
Right.
you could, having served his.
Right, so if you do your 25,
Yeah.
right? So he probably retired in his late 40s to maybe 50, somewhere in that range. So think about that, everybody. Like what happens in New Jersey most of the time is that folks then go out because they're still very young. They get another job. They're collecting a pension. And within usually, for police officers, it was usually within 4.5 years of retirement, they have exhausted everything they contributed into the fund. So 2 things I did. I increased the amount that folks had to pay in because even without the COLAs, they were behind. And I eliminated the COLAs. Now, Social Security, totally different situation.
Okay.
Because Social Security is a safety net program. Pensions are not. Because everybody who's got a pension also has Social Security. And they're getting a COLA on Social Security. So this, to me, was double dipping. You're getting a COLA there, and you're getting a COLA on your pension, and we can't afford it. So my response to folks, not only in law enforcement, but I did the same thing with every other public worker, was, you know, we can either lose the pension or we get rid of the COLA, but we can't have both. And you know what? We've now gone, that reform passed in 2011. So it's now 12 years. And, you know, everybody's still doing fine. I'll tell you one funny story about it
Okay.
that you can relate to him. Mary Pat and I have a house at the beach. I'm sitting, it's not on the beach, but it's at the beach.
Is that Island Beach?
No, that's the governor's residence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did used to have that, but once you lose the job, you lose the house.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
This
You're
is
right.
now our house in Bay Head, New Jersey. And I'm sitting on the front porch, and our house is on a street. And a guy comes driving down the street, and this happens all the time now. The local paper printed our address kindly in the paper after I bought the house. And so people often drive by really slowly and look, is he there? You know, whatever. And this guy drove by slowly, and then he went. Okay, so he looked. But then he came back around. It's a one-way street. And he stops his car, and he yells, "Hey, Christie." And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "I want my COLA back. I need my money." He was driving a red convertible Corvette. And I looked at him and I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "I was a state trooper." And I said to him, "Well, congratulations, because on a state trooper's salary and now a pension, you can afford a red Corvette convertible. So I don't think you're in that much trouble." And he then gave the universal sign
Yeah, I was going to say that was.
of
that
love
probably didn't
and
go-
respect in New Jersey
The New Jersey state.
to me,
Yep.
and then he drove, not having to have even higher taxes to pay for that. And what's happened also since then, our credit rating has gone way up because we don't have that debt anymore. But guess what? And we're going to deal with this problem with federal spending. We need to reduce federal spending, everybody. And guess what? There's going to be somebody who's got a question going, you know, you eliminated this program that I really liked and that I benefited from, and you're an SOB and I hate you for it. Get ready, because I'm going to reduce spending when I'm president because we have $34 trillion in debt. And when I do it, my popularity is going to go like this. Because after we passed pension and benefit reform in 2011, my popularity went like that. But by 2 years later, when I ran for re-election, I got 61% of the vote. Because you know what people said? Hey, man, he meant it. I ran on it. I meant it. I did it. And by the way, let's remember this. I got it passed by a Democratic legislature. It's a completely Democratic legislature. So whatever anger people feel about that, they got anger at both parties because we both understood finally that something needed to be done. It's like Social Security in that you get to a point where something's got to be done. And someone's ox is going to get gored. For us on Social Security, it's going to be people who are much younger, and it's going to get gored later on. But someone's going to have that happen. And so for him, I'd say to him, look, I've had people flip me the bird over this any number of times in New Jersey, some people who are angry about it. But in the end, every police officer and firefighter, every state worker is collecting their full pension because we didn't go bankrupt, because it didn't go worse than $150 billion in debt. And that's what I used to say to him all the time. I went to a firefighters convention one time in the midst of this argument about the COLAs. And I got up there and they just booed me unmercifully. 2,500 firefighters at the Wildwood, New Jersey Convention Hall. And I get up there and they're booing the hell out of me. And I said, so come on, you can do better than that. And they did. At the end of it, I said to them, why are you booing me? I'm the first person who's come into this room in the last 20 years and told you the truth. How about booing every one of those SOBs who didn't contribute a nickel to the pension as a state and told you that everything was going to be fine, you were going to get all your benefits? I'm here, I'm going to tell you the truth. And when I do what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to save your pension for you. And I promise you that years from now, you're going to come and thank me. None of them have done that yet. But I'm waiting, and some of them will at some point, but that's the story. And I think, you know, what I'd say to and I love the state police. They protected us for 8 years. They do extraordinary work, and they're selfless, and they sacrifice, but they're compensated really well in their salaries, and they're compensated really well in their pension, And by the way, you know what else they get? Lifetime health benefits. Lifetime health benefits. All right? He didn't write a question to complain about that because I didn't touch that. But they get lifetime health benefits. And when you retire at 48, 49, 50, that's 30 years based on life expectancy of free health benefits, except they're not free. We're paying for them. Okay, I'm willing to do that for the sacrifice that they made by putting their lives on the line as state troopers every day. I'm willing to pay for that. But there comes a moment when you have to say, enough. We can't do anymore. And they get their pension, they get their lifetime health benefits, and apparently for some of them, they get the convertible red Corvette also, and the ability to give me the universal sign of love and respect. So tell him I said thanks for the question, and he can come by Bayhead anytime and thank me personally.
Okay, I appreciate it. We'll
Got
have some
it.
interesting comments.
All right. Let's go right there to that gentleman. Yes, you, sir.
So going back to the federal spending cut, one of my funny things near and dear to my heart is Vivek has said he's going to fire half the federal workforce day one.
Yeah,
I laugh
sure he
because
is.
I'm an air traffic controller and I work 6 days a week, most of the year. So, you know, I find it very, very humorous, but I do understand, you know, the government deficit. But what is your take on that?
It's ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as it sounds. I think he's up to 75% now. In the last debate, he said he's going to fire 75% of all federal workers on day one. Get ready, everybody. I mean, look, the good news is he's not going to be president of his chess club, let alone of the president of the United States, okay? He's not going to be any of those things. But this is what to be beware of in this race. That's a kid to shoot him stone cold dead at the border. That's a kid to, we're going to build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it, right? That's a kid to Nikki Haley saying about fentanyl, I'm going to end all trade relations with China if they keep sending it. We do like $700 billion of trade a year. What she doesn't tell you is, if she does that, how much higher prices are going to be for everybody and how much it's going to shrink GDP and cause people to be laid off of their jobs. But that's the second sentence, you see. See, what I want from every one of these people on the stage is to stand here and give me the second sentence and the third sentence and the fourth sentence that comes after that. Let me tell you something. I don't want them to, not only I don't want them to fire you, I want them to make sure you get home safe every night. Because I flew 45 and a half hours in the last 8 days. Man, you are the most important person in my life right now. And let's face it, for any of us, it's easy to demonize federal workers. It's easy to demonize federal workers. But here we have somebody who's an air traffic controller who, when you get in an airplane, he's such a professional that you don't have to worry about planes crashing into each other and things going wrong in the sky because we have the best air traffic control system in the world. And it's true. And that's manned by men and women who, by the way, are not, you know, getting Warren Buffett wealthy off doing it, all right? We have FBI agents every day who put their lives on the line to protect this country from terrorism, to protect them from street crime, to protect us from drug dealers, to protect us from the folks in the mafia in this country, and all these other things. And those men and women put their lives on the line every day, and I know what they're getting paid. They're not getting paid a fortune either. Do we need to reduce federal spending? We do. But quite frankly, I think it's much more on contracting and procurement than it is on individual employees. And so my view on this would be, like, when you say something like that, it also shows you've never been involved in government. Because when I had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget, that's what I inherited when I won the governorship. We didn't go in and say, we're cutting 30% of everything. That'd be completely irresponsible. What you do is you go to every department and say, start at zero and come and justify for me everything you spend. And as you go through that process, you can find things that you can do without. For us, it was 832 state programs that I eliminated in my first year. It allowed me to balance that $11 billion deficit without raising taxes. Now, again, popularity went down because every one of those programs had a constituency. So I'm not saying this will be easy, but the idea that you're going to cut 50 or 75% of all federal workers is just, it's sophistry. And I tell you, I've been on the stage when he said that and people cheer in the audience. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, what are you talking about? He's not going to do that. He can't do it. And now if Vivek were here, he'd say, yes, I can do it. And you can't do it because you're a part of the establishment and you're part of the problem. Oh, yeah. And you're 38 years old from Harvard. You got 2 problems, neither of which I have. So what I would say to you is I want to tell you, since when I was first governor, and we have responsibility over the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which runs all the airports in where you need to be sedated if you were a controller in New York with that airspace. But one of the early places they took me was the control tower at Newark Airport, and I had no clue about what these guys do, none. And I went up there and I spent 30 minutes up there, and I was like, oh my God. Like, if you all ever had the opportunity to watch what they do, you'd be even happier that we have professional people up there who really care about their job and are willing to do it the right way, because it's incredible how they juggle all of these airplanes over the United States. It's just an amazing job. So thank you for what you do every day. And we're not, in a Christie presidency, we're not cutting your job. All right, I can take 2 more, and then I can let you go home. Sir, right in the back. Yep. He's going to come around behind you.
Hi, my name is David Hagan. I'm chairman of the Hampton Republican Committee, so I want to start by saying welcome to Hampton.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
My question is, we hear a lot lately about the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab and his cast of characters. Do you see these people as a potential threat to our freedom and civil liberties? And if so, what can you do about that?
Well, the first thing I could do about it is I've never gone. I've been invited to Davos every year since I was elected governor of New Jersey in 2010, and I've never gone because I think it's a pile of crap. I want to be honest with you. It's a bunch of rich people who get around and talk about how rich they are and how they can stay rich. And then every once in a while, they complain about climate change, and then they all get in their private jets and fly home. Okay, I think the World Economic Forum is a bunch of hypocrites. And I don't think they're a real threat because I don't think that most people take them seriously. They take themselves very seriously. But I think people who are responsible, smart government officials don't spend a lot of time listening to these folks. They go over and they get to ski in Davos for free because they invite you over there for free if you're in elected office. And you get to go over and you get to ski in Davos for free. One of my predecessors, Governor Christie Whitman, went to Davos one year and she broke her leg skiing. Imagine when she tried to come home and explain that one. She was over for an economic forum and she comes home with a broken leg. You know, well, what were you doing? Was it, boy, those economic discussions got pretty brutal, huh? I see no use or purpose in it. I think, like I said, I can't put it any better. It's a bunch of rich people talking to each other about how rich they are and how they get to stay rich. And every once in a while, they talk about how maybe they can make a few other people rich, and then they get in their private jets after they complain about climate change and go home. So I don't take it seriously. I don't think it's a threat. I think as long as you have people in the leadership of our government who look at that and know the crock that it is, let them go over and have their conference and go ski and eat their caviar. And you know what? We'll be back here doing the real work that needs to be done to keep America the greatest economic power in the world now and in the future. And I'm sure I won't get any help from Klaus on that, nor will I seek any when I'm president. So that's the way I feel about that one. All right, I'll go to the gentleman in the back in the plaid shirt. You'll be our final question of the evening.
Thank you. I just have kind of a universal question. It used to be that how can we make Republicans and Democrats work together, get along, do all this? What I see in the news these days is how can you make Republicans work with each other? If you were to be elected, you have the majority of the people, I think, that were on the stage with the other night and who weren't, as well as in the House of Representatives who, going back to what you're talking about in Israel and these powers, and they don't put them all together. And so you're not going to have people that want to fund the Ukraine. And, how can you bring everybody together to see what the threats are there, that if you don't do this, this is going to be the outcome? And,
Well, look, it's hard work. There's no substitute in this for hard work. I go back to my experience as governor. I had a Democratic legislature for all 8 years. People who had actively worked against electing me twice. And they weren't close. It was 25-15 in the Senate, and it was 48-32 in the House. So it wasn't like, oh, I just need a vote or two, and I'll be fine. Like, they dominated. And so I had to make a decision really early on. Like, am I going to try to get things done, or am I just going to make noise and make headlines and then blame them for things not getting done? And so I'll tell you what I did. After I got elected, there was also a new Senate president elected. Guy's name is Steve Sweeney, and he is the president of the Iron Workers Union in New Jersey. So another shy and retiring guy to work with. He's from the southern part of our state, about 2 hours from my home. So one day during the transition, I said to the state police, take me down to Senator Sweeney's office. And they said, you don't have an appointment. I said, I think he'll see me. Take me down. Should we call ahead? No, don't call ahead. I want to surprise him. So we drove down there, and I went into his office, and his assistant, who was at the front desk, like nearly passed out when I came walking in. She's like, Governor-elect, I don't think you have an appointment. I said, I know. I was in the neighborhood, and I just decided to stop by. And she said, well, let me see if the senator's available. Tell him. I said, please tell him that I need a couple minutes. So I then figured out why Steve was a little bit embarrassed to come out. He had just got done working out. He didn't have any appointments that day. So he was in sweatpants and a T-shirt and sneakers. And he comes out, he's like, Governor-elect, what are you doing here? And I said, I was in the neighborhood. I'd say, he goes, no, you weren't. Your neighborhood is 2 hours away. You weren't in the neighborhood. I said, I want to talk to you. Let's go in your conference room. And when in this conference room, I said, look, I said, we got to make a fundamental decision here. I said, are we going to yell and scream at each other all the time, make headlines, and get nothing done? Or are we going to put touchdowns in the end zone? I said, I can do either thing for the next 8 years. I'm really good at it. Whatever you want to do. But we need to come to an agreement on that. And he said, 4 years. I said, no, 8 years. And I said, Steve, I'll give you a promise. If you want to try to put touchdowns in the end zone, I'll try to get some things done that you want. You commit to trying to get some things done that I want. And I promise you I'll never break my word to you if I give it to you. Even if it turns out to be a political problem for me, I will keep my word if you're willing to make me the same promise. And it was the most important 10 seconds of my governorship, because he sat there for 10 seconds thinking, and he stood up and he put his hand out and he said, let's put touchdowns in the end zone. I said, okay. We shook hands, and we kept our word to each other for 8 years. Now, we fought a lot. One time I came down to the end of my driveway to get the Sunday paper, and the headline on the biggest newspaper in the state was, Sweeney, I want to punch Christie in the head. So it's not like we didn't fight. We fought. But in the end, we'd get into my office, and one or the other of us would say to the one who was being unreasonable, and sometimes it was me, and sometimes it was him, we'd say, touchdowns in the end zone. And I tried to do that with almost every member of the legislature, to call them to my office, to meet with them, to talk with them, to get to know them. Why did you run in the first place? What do you really want to try to accomplish? What's important to you? Tell me about your wife or your husband. Tell me about your kids. What really matters to you? It takes a lot of time to do that and a lot of effort. And as Mary Pat will tell you, we had some dinners with people, not only that we don't agree with, but what we couldn't stand. Like, they just weren't really nice people, but they got elected, right? So I think the only way to rebuild this is that way. I got great advice from somebody one time about how to deal with conflict in politics. He said to me, it's a lot harder to hate up close. And it is. We keep each other at a distance now. Social media keeps us at a distance. Our travel keeps us at a distance. My strategy as governor, and it will be the same as president, is to break down the distance, to get them to come in and talk to me. And guess what? You're president of the United States, you have the greatest home field advantage in the world. Everybody wants to come to the Oval Office. Everybody wants to ride on Air Force One. Everybody wants to ride on Marine One. Everyone would love to come to Camp David for a weekend. Man, they give you tools in this job that I could only dream of as governor, right? You know, imagine calling up a second-term House member on the Democratic side and say, hey, Jim, this is the president. Let's just start with that, right? And you say, Jim, look, Mary Pat and I are going to Camp David, and we're going to have dinner out there Saturday night. Would you and your wife like to come? We'd love to have you. Come on, man. That guy is going to be getting dressed starting on Thursday, right? And you got to do that stuff. It's a human business, and we've stripped the humanity out of it. But let me tell you, at the end of 8 years, I'm going to be tired, because that's going to take a ton of work to start to rebuild this. But I really believe it's the only way to do it. There's no magic. And you've got tools, not the only ones I talked about, but look, there's going to be appointments they're going to want to have that I'm not going to care about. You want to appoint this friend to that? Okay, let's make sure they're smart. Let's make sure that they haven't committed any crimes. Let's make sure they have good judgment. And then, okay, it's not my guy. I don't know him, but you want it that badly? Good, because then I'm going to be calling him 6 months from now and going, I need this. Oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, well, remember your guy who I appointed to the fill in the blank? I didn't need to do that. Come on now. The check is due, and then you're going to learn. Either that's the person who wants to put touchdowns in the end zone, or now he's off the list. He's not someone who understands what it means to work together. So I'm not despondent about that part of it. I'm really not. Because, look, New Jersey has a well-earned reputation for being one of the toughest places in this country. And the elbows are sharp, and I've got the New York and Philadelphia media on my back every day. And, you know, as a Republican, I am not the favored party. There's 1 million more Democrats in New Jersey than Republicans. I mean, I've been in the barrel, but it can be done if you care enough to do the job the right way and that you enjoy it. And in a perverse way, I do. I enjoy that challenge. I mean, I enjoy the challenge of bringing in, you know, the guy who is now the Senate president, who at the time was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's a lawyer. I brought him in for my first meeting with him because he approves every one of your appointees or doesn't. So early on, I brought him into the office to talk to him. And I said, what kind of law do you practice? And he said, I'm an ambulance chaser. And I went, oh, yeah, okay. Well, what do you really do? And he goes, oh, no, I'm an ambulance chaser. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this guy, right? By the time we got to the end of the first term, there wasn't a deal we couldn't make. And you know what he'd say now? After 6 years of a Democratic governor who replaced me, I'd take Christie back because I could make deals with him. Everybody's there for a reason. The job of the president or the governor is to find out what that reason is and then use that reason to get things done. Help them achieve what they want to achieve so they can help you achieve what you need to achieve for the country. Because in the end, people aren't going to blame the two-term congressman if things go off the rails. They're going to blame the president of the United States. So that's why you have to be motivated to do it that way. And I promise you that's what I'll do. I've done it before. If my mom were still alive, she'd be saying to me, and my mom was a pretty bawdy Sicilian, and she would say to me, I don't know how you deal with this shit. That's what she would say. But I enjoy it. And I think when you can do things like that and you make the lives of people a little bit better, a step at a time, for me, that's why I do this. The satisfaction of watching that happen and knowing I played a part in it. And so, you know, that's the way I would do it. So I wouldn't be despondent about it. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. Not going to happen the first 6 months. You know, the first 100 days, I'm not going to say, everybody loves each other. Let's go, you know, toast marshmallows up at Camp David, you know? But what I am going to say is we're getting there. We're getting there. So let me end with this. First off, thank you. This is a really good group tonight. I can't believe I got as many New Jersey questions as I got, but I thank you and thank you for bringing me back to my days as governor. I've been out for almost 6 years now, but I will tell you that every job I've had in public life has been incredibly rewarding, and it's given more to me than I could have ever hoped. My 7 years as a prosecutor, every day I went into work feeling like I was on the side of the angels. My job was to do justice, make sure justice got done every day. And what a gift that President Bush gave me to give me the chance to do that. And I learned so much and grew up so much and did really good work, I think. And then the chance to become governor of the state where you were born and raised, I only wish my mother had lived long enough to see it. She wouldn't have believed it. She really wouldn't have believed it. But what she did believe, and what she told me from the time I was a little kid, was Christopher. She was the only one who called me Christopher. Because if you had given your kid the name Chris Christie, you'd call him Christopher too. She said to me, Christopher, you can be anything you want to be. You just have to decide you're willing to work hard enough to get it. And my mom really believed that. And so there would be part of her who said, well, he worked hard enough, he got it. But there'd be another part of her who wouldn't believe it, that their son, my mom, never went to college. She was the product of a single mother. She helped to raise her 2 younger siblings. She fought and worked hard for everything she had in her life. And she would be, I think, amazed to even see me become governor, let alone see this tonight. So becoming governor of my state, where I was born and raised, was an enormous gift. I said to someone earlier on the way in, if you're governor, I think you can never leave the state where you were governor. You got to stay, because those people have given you the gift of being the governor of that state, and what you owe them back is your loyalty to that state and that place. Not get up and walk away, but stay and help them continue to fight. And running for president is an extraordinary gift too, and especially running up here, because you people are for real. And New Hampshire takes it seriously. That's why I love being here. And I love the fact that you show up at things like this and are willing to ask me tough questions. But what I want to also remind you as we leave tonight is being an American is a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift that most of us in this room, I suspect, didn't earn. It was a true gift. It was given to us by our parents because we were born here. And there are people all over the world who are dying, literally dying, to get here, who would give anything to wake up in Hampton, New Hampshire, or Mendham, New Jersey. Would give anything. And I think we've lost sight of that. Yeah, we have problems that we have to fix, of course. Remember, the Constitution said in order to form a more perfect union. They never thought it was going to be perfect, and it never will be. But this is a gift. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with the gift we've been given? We're going to moan and complain, bitch about it? Or are we going to do everything we can to make it better? And sometimes that means arguing. This country was set up to be an argument, but only arguments that lead to a result, not arguments just for the sake of arguing. And I think that's where our politics has gotten. And I think that's what you're talking about. And that's useless. You know, the next president of the United States is going to get to be president on the 250th birthday of this country. 2026 is coming fast. And it'll be 250 years then since the Declaration of Independence. And when you think about what's happened in these 250 years and what this country has done and what it's meant to the world in a relatively short amount of time in the history of the world, we should be damn proud at what we've done and what our ancestors have done. And what we have to ask ourselves now is, what's our legacy? What's our legacy? I'm running for president because I believe that the love we have for this country can only be amplified if we open our hearts to each other. You know, most of the people in this country are good people. And we need to open our hearts to each other and work hard to make this place better for everybody. And I think we can do it because the proof is we've done it before. And those folks that we read about in history books may be made to sound better than us, but I don't think they are better than us. I think they should be what we aspire to be every day. And, you know, John Adams, when he was getting ready to die, right at the end of his life, remember he died on the 50th anniversary of this country, July 4th of 1826. He wrote in his diary something really important for us. He wrote it for posterity. He said, "You shall never know the sacrifices that were made to secure for you your liberty. I pray you make a good use of it. For if you do not, I shall repent in heaven for ever having made the sacrifice at all." I'm running for president because I don't want him to repent in heaven because I wasn't willing to do everything I could do to meet that aspiration. And New Hampshire is going to get to decide, I honestly believe this, who the next president of the United States is. And you have a huge responsibility. We deserve better than what we've been given over the last decade by Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We deserve better. But the great thing about this country is we don't have to wait for some king or queen to give it to us. We can go and take it ourselves. And it starts at the ballot box on January 23rd right here. Don't cave to public opinion. Don't whisper about what you want to do. Say it out loud. Don't back away because you think someone's inevitable to win. No one's inevitable to win. Let's not try to figure out who the president's going to be and vote for that person. How about you figure out who you want to be president and then go make that person the president? And New Hampshire is one of the few states in this country where you actually have the ability to do that. By the time the primary comes to New Jersey on June 5th, forget it. It's going to be over. You get to make it happen. I want your vote. I need your support. And I promise you in return exactly what I said to this lady when she asked me about that dark moment in my career. I will always be accountable for everything that happens on my watch. It will not be perfect because I'm not perfect. And if you're looking for the perfect candidate, you're going to be looking for a long time. But you will always get the truth out of me. You'll know exactly what I feel. And I will work hard every day to make you proud of the fact that you voted for me. So thanks for coming tonight.